Right now at 5, anger from some.
This law is ridiculous. You need to change it.
Firm support from others.
No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
New York's emotional split over new prisoner policies.
Answers about the past.
We're very happy to be able to be part of a solution for them.
People traveling hundreds of miles to learn the truth about their adoption.
Pill problems, how buying medicine for your kids in the past may make you some money today.
Plus, everybody dance right now. Why busting a move might do wonders for your brain.
CBS 6 News starts now with breaking news.
And as we hit the air tonight, an historic move at our nation's capital.
The articles of impeachment against President Trump will move from the House to the Senate for trial.
CBS 6's Liz Bishop is monitoring these developments for us. Liz, what's the latest?
Well, Greg and Ann, this is the final step by the House in the process of impeaching the president. House members voted to approve the impeachment managers chosen by Speaker Pelosi and to send the articles of impeachment to the Senate for trial. We take you live right now to the nation's capital inside the House. A look at an empty podium so far. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is expected to finalize the impeachment articles with a short engrossment ceremony, it's called. Basically, it's a photo op in which the Speaker and the House clerk sign the articles before they're then handed over to the Senate. Now that the 7 House managers who basically will serve as prosecutors are in place.
The resolution is adopted and without objection.
The House voted on a resolution to appoint the 7 House managers in the upcoming Senate trial. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff will be the lead manager. Pelosi reportedly said her interest was in putting together a team of litigators to try what she called a good case, bringing a month-long standoff with the House to a close. It was nearly 4 weeks ago that the chamber voted along party lines to impeach President Trump on charges of abuse of power and obstruction of justice. The reaction to today's actions, swift and partisan.
By selecting these particular batch of managers, the Speaker has further proven she's not interested in winning the minds, the hearts, or even following the Constitution.
It's not personal, it's not political, it's not partisan, it's patriotic.
Just today, the House Intelligence Committee released new documents and text messages from indicted businessman Lev Parnas, who says he helped the president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, pressure Ukraine to investigate the Bidens. The Senate impeachment trial itself is expected to begin early next week. And as the developments warrant, we will come back and let you know what's happening in Washington. Ann and Greg.
Thank you, Liz.
Well, halfway through this first month of 2020, bail reform still the big point of discussion at the Capitol. Criminal cases, lawmaker policies, and the lives of victims and suspects, all affected by these controversial laws.
We have 2 big stories related to the topic tonight and team coverage on those stories. First, a fight between those in favor of bail reform and those actively against it. CBS 6's Emily DeFisciani has that emotional, impactful story from the state capitol tonight. Emily, both sides making cases today.
Yeah, that's right, Ann. And we saw a lot of emotion from both sides, from tears to shouting, both sides appearing equally passionate in defending what they believe is best for our criminal justice system.
This law is ridiculous. You need to change it.
Sheila Harris lost her cousin, Maria Rosie Osai, on Christmas Eve. The mother of 3 was hit and killed by an unlicensed driver in Rockland County. Harris says under new bail reform laws, the driver was arrested Christmas morning, arraigned and released, all before Osai's 3 children were told she had died.
How can you sign a law that allows a man to hit a woman, leave her in the street like a dog, to die with nobody there, and he gets out to enjoy his holiday that he now took from us?
Harris was joined by the Assembly Minority Conference, law enforcement, and district attorneys in calling for an immediate repeal of bail reform, saying it went too far, too fast.
Improvements to the state's criminal justice system was a procedure that required a scalpel, but unfortunately the governor and the legislative majorities decided to use a chainsaw.
But bail reform advocates standing up on the $1 million staircase say they're not standing down.
No justice! No peace!
They're fighting against any reform rollback, arguing that fear-mongering is being used to misinform. They say the bail system unfairly targeted poor and minority communities.
This is the continuation of a pattern that has existed in our society, whether it be slavery to Jim Crow to now. We are not going back.
And lawmakers say it's fitting to defend criminal justice reform and the release of thousands of accused on this day, the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Free at last! Free at last! Thank God Almighty! We are free at last!
Governor Cuomo has said that bail reform is still a work in progress and that some changes do need to be made. We're live in Albany. I'm Emily DePisciani, CBS 6 News.
Thank you, Emily. Paul Barbaratano was charged with manslaughter and released under the new bail reform laws. Today, he is back behind bars. Barbaratano now faces an upgraded murder charge for the death of Nicole Jennings in Albany. CBS 6's Leandra Rosa was in the Albany County courtroom today and has the update on his indictment.
Paul Barbaratano was sent back to the Albany County Jail without bail after his arraignment today. He was indicted by a grand jury on a second-degree murder charge and pled not guilty. Nearly 2 weeks after being released on his own recognizance, Paul Barbaratano faced a judge again, this time being arraigned for a grand jury indictment of second-degree murder.
And asked that the court enter a not guilty plea.
Barbaratano's defense attorneys believe the murder charge isn't appropriate. They say Barbaratano and the victim were engaged in a sexual encounter, and he accidentally stabbed her when he tried to cut a belt wrapped around her neck that was too tight. The defense team says they're concerned the murder indictment stemmed from extensive media coverage of bail reform and was just a way to get Barbaratano back in jail.
So this indictment, in my view, is subject to great challenge on a number of grounds, and one of them is the fact that they didn't give a grand jury a chance to consider something other than that.
The decision to indict this defendant was on January 10th, was made well before his release, as Ms. Sokol is aware, and that there was a bunch of evidence that needed to be reviewed.
The prosecution pushed to have Barbaratano sent back to jail without bail, saying they feel he's a flight risk. The defense team argued he should be kept out. They say since his release on January 2nd, he's been in an inpatient facility for veterans to get treatment for his mental health issues. They say it's been working and the jail's treatment is not good enough.
Looking for a long-term answer, someplace where, mental health issues don't just go away.
Judge Carter ultimately determined because of the second-degree murder charge and because he feels he's a flight risk to remand him. Again, Barbaratano was sent back to jail without bail. The next appearance date has not been scheduled yet. In Albany, Leandra Rosa, CBS 6 News.
This is just one of the stories we alerted you to today on the CBS 6 News app. For breaking news alerts, download our app in the Apple App Store or on Google Play.
Breaking right now at 5, police searching the streets of Albany still for a suspect in a Dodge Durango who evaded police capture earlier this afternoon. This happened near the Whitney Young Health Center on Lark Drive. Police observed the stolen car in the parking lot. They say the driver tried to go forward, then in reverse, striking a state police vehicle. They say the driver went through a fence to escape, then was able to get away as officers kept their distance to keep the public safe.
He's a known parolee. We know he's in a stolen vehicle. And like I said, we know who this individual is. We'll continue to look for him. And, our investigation's ongoing.
And police say the good news is that no one was hurt during all that chaos.
Also breaking tonight, a man in Schenectady arrested in connection to a fatal hit and run from Christmas. Police say Ishwanard Goberdon intentionally struck the victim in a parking lot on State Street. The victim has been identified as Alejandro Melendez. Officials believe he left the county the day after the crash. Authorities say he returned yesterday and was taken into custody. Police say an autopsy reveals that the victim suffered blunt force trauma after being hit by a car.
A Glens Falls man has been charged with rape just a few weeks after he was arrested for a different crime. The Warren County Sheriff's Office says 20-year-old Anthony Hart had sexual contact with a 14-year-old girl. They say it happened at a home in Queensbury back in December. Hart has also been charged with criminal sexual act. He was arraigned and remanded to the Warren County Correctional Facility. That's where he is now. Police confirmed that Hart had been previously investigated as the prime suspect in a suspicious fire at a vacant home on Route 9. Hart was charged with arson in that case. Investigators say that house on Route 9 has been vacant for quite a few years now. You can find much more on all our past coverage of these stories by visiting our website, cbs6albany.com. You can also find breaking news alerts on the go by following us on Facebook and Twitter.
All right, we made it to halfway through the week, if you can believe it. Snow expected for this weekend. First, though, we want to show you this beautiful live look from Troy as the sun is setting. Just gorgeous out there. And meteorologist Craig Adams is here looking ahead to tonight's forecast.
Yeah, we could even see a little snow tonight before we talk about that bigger system that will affect us this weekend. 47 today. That's 17 above the normal high, so it felt pretty good despite the lack of sunshine. We really didn't clear out, at least locally, until later in the day, although areas to the south did see more sunshine. Freihopper sky cam in Albany right now, 41 degrees at the present time. And again, you can see it looks mainly clear there as we've progressed into the early evening period. All right, let's take a look at what's going to be happening. We have a weather system not particularly strong out across portions of the central and western Great Lakes. It's advancing towards the region, and later tonight, after midnight, it's going to bring a mix of some snow and rain. A few areas will see the accumulation add up to 2, 3, 4 inches, but a lot of us aren't going to see really all that much, maybe a coating to an inch. So we'll break that down coming up in a few minutes for you in greater detail. But tonight, look for that mixed rain and snow to develop mainly after midnight. We'll talk more about that storm that will be more widespread and more impactful, too, to the area that's heading our way for the weekend. That's coming up in a few minutes.
All right, thank you very much, Craig. You paid for it update tonight on your tax dollars in your local school district. The state controller, Tom DiNapoli, has announced that hikes in school property taxes for the next school year will be capped at 1.81%. That's down from the 2% cap of the past 2 years. DiNapoli says school district and municipal officials need to be fiscally cautious and examine where they can limit spending so they can stay under the cap. Now, this comes at the same time the teachers union NYSET is saying New York schools are seriously underfunded. Expect this to be just the first round of belt tightening. The state is facing a $6 billion budget deficit. We should learn more when Governor Cuomo delivers his budget address in the coming days.
Keeping track of key health concerns for women, the steps you need to take to make sure you're safe from cervical cancer.
And speaking of steps, taking care of your brain with your best moves, the correlation between dancing and your mental health. We're following several big stories right now on CBS 6 News.
Including major developments in the Schoharie limo crash investigation.
I'm Liz Bishop. The NTSB releases its long-awaited safety recommendations following the Schoharie limo crash. I'll break it down for you and have a one-on-one interview with the NTSB chairman.
Also breaking, several dead when a World War II plane crashes into a fireball. New information just into our newsroom.
And a health scare for Senator and presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. What we've learned about his condition now on CBS 6 News at 5.
CBS 6 News starts now with breaking news.
2 breaking developments today as we approach 1 year since the Schoharie limo crash. The NTSB releasing recommendations and new findings from its investigation.
And the trial for limo operator Nauman Hussein now delayed by 2 months. We have extensive team coverage tonight over the next couple of hours. Reporters Leanda Rosa, Heather Kovar, and Emily DeFisciani all working today's big story. But we start with CBS 6's Liz Bishop, who took our questions straight to the source of this report. She is live in D.C. tonight. Liz, what did you learn?
Greg, NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt explained to me in an extended interview that his safety recommendations couldn't wait until they were able to put together a final report, including a probable cause. And he also didn't think it would be in place by the time we thought that the trial of Nauman Hussein was going to start in January. But he says these recommendations, these safety ideas, can save lives.
Probably never know if the passengers could have survived the crash forces. But we do know that in the aft part of the vehicle retained its survivable space. That part we do know. It was not crushed.
NTSB Chairman Robert Sumwalt explaining to me what triggered this interim safety report dealing with seatbelt use. While he cannot say definitively if it would have made a difference, Sumwalt told me inadequate seats, improper seatbelts, and lack of seatbelt use made survival of the passengers all but impossible.
We need occupants of vehicles to be properly restrained.
We learned the driver, Scott Lisanicchia, was wearing a belt, but the force of the crash was too great to save him. These are our first actual images of the crushed vehicle. Many of the problems cited in the report occurred because the original vehicle was modified to fit more passengers. Seatbelts that did not line up properly, seat frames that separated from their anchors, lap belts that were not visible.
Once that vehicle is stretched, it's now in a different category. So those same safety standards that kept passengers or kept occupants safe as a passenger car, many of those no longer apply now that it's in a different category.
Someone told me the final report is likely to deal with standardizing limos and looking at ways to regulate modifications. Where might you go next?
We certainly will be looking at the brakes. When you have a vehicle that obviously does not stop at a stop sign, the brakes are something that we feel are very important. So we'll be looking at the mechanical condition of the vehicle. We'll be looking at driver factors. What was the condition of the driver? We'll be looking at the oversight, the state oversight, the federal oversight.
But for now, this interim report is recommending that New York State implement as part of its inspection process seatbelts that are functional and accessible in all limos in the state, adding that mandatory seatbelt laws in New York would decrease fatalities. Sumwalt's team is also recommending the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration require all newly modified vehicles to have lap and shoulder belts for each passenger, and to ensure that seating systems modified for new vehicles meet some minimum performance standards so they can maintain their integrity in a crash. It's important to point out that the NTSB's recommendations for lap and shoulder belts for each passenger's seating position is limited to new vehicles only. I asked why.
We felt that it would be too big of a bite on the apple to go back and require all of the hundreds of thousands of limousines that are already out there to be retrofitted.
As for the limo industry itself, Sumwalt says that there's been no need to go to them directly and say, here's what we want you to do, because they're not in a position to get them to comply. But they are encouraging the operators to educate themselves about the importance of seatbelts and how they can save lives, and to make them functional and accessible for all passengers in all limousines. Greg?
Liz, I know you mentioned the final report will come out sometime next year. Any idea exactly when next year?
Well, at first I was asking Robert Sumwalt about the January date for the start of the Nauman Hussein trial, because obviously the final report is going to include probable cause. But he said he didn't think it would be done by January, maybe not even by February. So it's interesting to think that perhaps once again this could align itself with the start of Hussein's trial. Greg?
All right, Liz, thank you so much for that report, and we'll see you again in just a matter of minutes. Liz Bishop live for us in Washington, D.C. tonight.
You can read the entire NTSB report on our website, CBS6Albany.com, and on the CBS 6 News app. Here are more key takeaways from the report. First, the impact of the crash pushed the front of the vehicle in by 60 inches. That's 5 feet of impact, even though the back part of the limo was left relatively unscathed. The limo had been altered by a company in Springfield, Missouri in 2001. They added modified seats, but the seats did not have belts that adequately lined up for safety purposes. In response, the NTSB recommended minimum seat standards for limousines that are modified.
And the NTSB chair told our Liz Bishop that the seatbelt safety recommendations are a reiteration from a previous report back in 2015. That was in response to an accident involving a bus in September of 2014 in Davis, Oklahoma. 4 members of the North Central Texas College softball team were killed when a tractor trailer crashed into their team bus. 12 others were injured. In a report released by the NTSB in November of 2015, they said that the failure of the players to wear seatbelts on the bus certainly contributed to injuries, and recommended seatbelt use on all vehicles that are equipped. Now, it will be up to lawmakers to help implement changes to make limos safer. Many of them are speaking out today. New York Senator Chuck Schumer says the NTSB's new safety recommendations have shown us that we can and absolutely must do more to close the fatal gaps in limo safety standards that contributed decisively to this tragedy. And from local Congressman Antonio Delgado, these findings by the National Transportation Safety Board only already begin to describe the systematic failures that occurred on October 6, 2018, and the necessary work ahead to better protect our communities. We owe it to the families and communities affected by this crash, as well as the first responders who rushed to the scene to aid those in need to create stronger safety protections, end quote. State Senator Jim Tedisco is calling for the state legislature to deal with limo safety in a special session, and we'll have more on that at 5:30.
And more breaking news on this big story tonight. The start date for the trial of Nauman Hussein, the operator of Prestige Limousine, has been delayed now from January to March of next year. CBS 6's Leandra Rosa reporting from court today.
Yeah, court just wrapped up here, and we're told that the trial has been moved from January 6th to March 9th. Now, today's conference comes ahead of a pre-trial hearing, which remains scheduled for November 4th. Now, we caught up with Nauman Hussein and his attorney, Lee Kinlan, each walking into court. We were not allowed to bring our cameras in, but I sat in the courthouse. The judge called the prosecution and defense teams into a closed-door meeting, which lasted nearly an hour. They came out and said they discussed scheduling issues and releasing evidence to the defense, including brake fluid samples. The prosecution will also release a grand jury transcript to the defense, which they're planning to do November 15th.
The current law requires us to turn over what's called Rosario material 3 days prior to trial. Now, due to the nature of this case and the volume, that wouldn't be fair, and it would be very detrimental to the families to have prepared for a trial and then to have it adjourned because of the volume. So what we have done is agreed with the court's order to turn over Rosario material that generally would not be turned over until 3 days before trial earlier.
We're going to stand on a no comment right now.
Okay.
There's still a lot of stuff left to be decided. I think it's best right now just to let the court process take over.
Again, the trial has been moved to March 9th, but that pre-trial hearing remains set at November 4th, and that's the next time they're expected to be here. Reporting in Schoharie, Leandra Rosa, CBS 6 News.
And again, if you want to read the full NTSB safety report, head to CBS6Albany.com. It is the first story on our website and the CBS 6 app. Additional reporting from Heather Kovar and Emily DeFisciani still ahead right here on CBS 6 News.
On to the weather now. Rain falling across parts of the capital region this afternoon. Looks kind of gloomy out there right now as we look at Albany Live. Let's check in right now with Chief Meteorologist Steve LaPointe. How about it, Steve?
All right, Greg. Yeah, certainly a sharp change from the warmth we had around this morning. It's now much, much chillier as temperatures have dropped. We've still got some patches of light rain and drizzle in the Mohawk Valley capital region. It's a little bit more concentrated down here across the eastern Catskills, the Mid-Hudson Valley. Everything gradually sliding off in a southerly direction like this, and with time will be drying out. It's already dried out across the North Country, and we might see some breaks in the clouds overnight tonight there. Everybody, though, still socked in with the clouds. Freihoffer's quad cam view certainly showing that. Troy and Glens Falls, and this is Lake George and Saratoga Springs. So it is gray, and it's certainly a lot cooler. Look at Bolton Landing at 50 degrees, 57 now Albany, 66 Kingston, where it made the mid-80s today, and Poughkeepsie actually setting a record high temperature at 88 degrees earlier today, and now cooling off considerably. We're down into the low 40s tonight, 30s North Country. I see a cold rain developing for us coming up tomorrow, so fall in full swing, no question about that. Timing out tomorrow's wet weather for you in the next couple of minutes.
All right, thank you, Steve. Tonight, Senator Bernie Sanders has canceled all campaign appearances until further notice as he recovers from a heart procedure. The Democratic presidential candidate's announcement comes less than 2 weeks before the next debate. CBS 6's JT Vetch joins us now live in the studio. JT, Sanders went to the hospital yesterday. We learned this today.
Yeah, that's right, Greg. The 78-year-old Vermont senator felt chest discomfort at a campaign event in Las Vegas yesterday. Tests at a hospital found Bernie Sanders had a blockage in an artery. As a result of that, Sanders had 2 stents inserted to open up that artery, and as we said, the senator is now recovering. Cardiologists say with hundreds of thousands of these common procedures performed every year, the Sanders situation serves as a reminder for Americans to know risk factors for heart disease like diabetes, cholesterol, high blood pressure, and yes, age. The Sanders campaign says the 78-year-old is in good spirits as he rests tonight. This as the hashtag #GetWellBernie has been trending all day with virtual well wishes on all sides of the political aisle. The latest Monmouth University poll shows Bernie Sanders in 3rd place among the Democratic candidates, behind now frontrunner Senator Elizabeth Warren. Joe Biden in a close second. Cardiologists tell CBS News most patients who receive stents like this are back to normal in about a week. We'll see. Ann?
Thank you, JT. Tonight, learning more about the victim of a terrible tragedy, an innocent bystander killed during a police pursuit. How he's being remembered next. And then all new at 6, in a field dominated by men, one student is breaking the stereotype. Her story is positively upstate.
CBS 6 News starts now.
Destruction on the streets of Cohoes.
A fire levels buildings, destroys businesses, and leaves people homeless.
It is from the worst disaster that I think the city's ever seen.
Now a man is under arrest, charged with starting the fire that has scarred the city.
Tonight, what's being done to protect the victims and why officials say this disaster could have been much, much worse.
We start this half hour with that breaking news. A state of emergency in Cohoes. Flames tearing through buildings in the heart of the city, burning some to the ground and seriously damaging more than a dozen others.
Emergency teams battled these flames for hours, fighting through what the mayor called the worst disaster the city has ever seen. Now, within the past few hours, police in Cohoes have tracked down and arrested the man they say started that fire, a resident of the building where the fire began.
The only good news, no serious injuries. We have team coverage tonight from the city of Cohoes. We're tracking the latest from City Hall and what's being done for all those people left out in the cold.
We're going to begin with Emily DeFisciani. She's live tonight near Remsen Street. And Emily, there have been some criminal developments since we last checked in with you.
Yeah, that's right, Liz and Greg. It certainly was a speedy arrest. Police announcing that they have charged 51-year-old John Gomes with arson and reckless endangerment, both felonies. Mayor Sean Moore says Gomes was burning material in a barrel behind the building where he lives on Remsen Street when heavy winds carried burning particles to other buildings that went up in flames. Police say when detectives arrived on scene, they interviewed neighbors that led them to Gomes, who police say then made statements incriminating himself in the cause of the fire. Now the mayor says while the arson may not have been intentional, he says it resulted in one of the biggest tragedies in the city's history.
We often tell people we don't allow open burns in the city, and they often say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, this open burn just caused millions of dollars in damage and has destroyed half of our downtown that we've worked so hard to rebuild.
The mayor says upwards of 20 buildings have been affected. He says staples in the community are completely destroyed. The popular restaurant Smith's is severely damaged, along with the sushi restaurant and other downtown businesses. Not to mention people's homes that have fire, smoke, and water damage. But the mayor says the city will pull through this devastation together.
Cohoes is a resilient city. We are going to rebuild, and we are going to be better than we ever have been. I know the citizens are going to depend on our leadership, and we're going to excel, and we're going to make them Cohoes proud. That's what we talk about all the time. But I just ask them to be patient because there's a lot of work to be done.
Again, for now, the mayor is asking residents to stay away from Remsen Street and the downtown area for their own safety. As for Gomes, the mayor says it appears he was trying to mimic a TV show and was trying to bend metal to make a hammer. He has already been arraigned and sent to Albany County Jail on $15,000 bail. For now, we're live in Cohoes. I'm Emily DeFisciani, CBS 6 News.
All right, Emily, thank you. We're trying to give you now a sense of where the fire happened. It started, as we said, on Remsen Street, which is right near the major roads, Route 470 and 787. And that's the Mohawk River, just miles away from the scene.
This is a look at what the area surrounding 228 Remsen Street looked like prior to the fire. The flames spread quickly throughout the afternoon, eventually reaching several other blocks of that street.
Right now, people who lived or worked in the damaged or destroyed buildings are really reeling from this, and the community is stepping up to help.
Our team coverage of the disaster in Cohoes continues right now. Lindsay DeLucia is live at a community center where those left homeless have gone for shelter. Lindsay, fill us in.
Well, Greg, it really still was a devastating day for those who had to walk through these doors behind me here at the community center. The Red Cross was initially on scene before they rounded up people who were not able to
intense. You can feel the heat.
Greg Dyer says panic set in today when flames took over his home.
It's just something you see in the news, and you just never think that this is going to happen to you. And then there is staring right on my face.
Dyer says his business partner saved his dog from the quick spreading fire, but some relics he could not save.
My mother passed away in 2015. Father passed away in 2011, so I had a lot of their stuff. And it's just heartbreaking to know that I lost it all.
The magnitude of this is unlike a lot of what we've been seeing locally lately.
The Red Cross arrived on scene early to round up those displaced.
It's just a lot of chaos and confusion, trying to figure out what they're going to do tonight, and that's what we're here for.
They brought residents with nowhere to go to the Cohoes Community Center and provided food, water, and warmth, as well as money cards to pay for hotel rooms.
They need everything. I mean, for the most part, when people have these types of emergencies and they have a home fire and their home is just burned down, it's starting from scratch.
It was at the community center where we spoke with resident Kevin Wilson.
And it's like this big cloud of smoke come by, and then look out the window, felt the heat hit me in my face. I was scared.
Wilson and his mother fled their home at 200 Remsen Street. He says he doesn't know when or if he'll be able to go back, but he's thankful for the Red Cross.
They give me money so I can survive, and I'm appreciative of that.
All right, thank you very much for the update, Lindsay. The fire and the aftermath have had a tremendous impact on the city. Right now, National Grid is reporting more than 1,000 customers in Cohoes are experiencing power outages. National Grid estimates that some of that power will be restored by about 2 a.m. And the fire is affecting transportation in the city right now. CDTA announced that it will reroute 2 bus lines, the 182 and the 522. They both go through Cohoes. CDTA says it expects to keep those buses rerouted right through the morning.
Until today, the fire to end all fires in Cohoes happened nearly 30 years ago in 1988, and winds played a role in that fire too. It was May 1988. Flames ripped through the same general area, Remsen, Mohawk, and Howard Streets, leveling 10 homes and 2 businesses, the Cohoes Carpet Center and Mara's Pharmacy. That was Assemblyman John McDonald's family business, damaged again today. Like today, 15-mile-an-hour gusts made things worse, sending power lines crashing into streets and cars. And like today, no one was seriously hurt, but that fire was an inferno.
The heat was so intense that we had to get out of the store because we were afraid for our lives. That we just had to get out of here.
The fire took over 5 hours for an army of firefighters from all over to bring it under control. It was later declared an arson, and the damage estimated at $1 million alone to the businesses destroyed. 64 people were left homeless.
Weather certainly always plays a factor in a high-stakes emergency situation like this fire. Chief Meteorologist Steve LaPointe is here now to give us some context of what the firefighters were dealing with on this windy afternoon.
All right, Greg, yeah, several environmental factors that certainly did not favor the situation today. One was the fact that the air was so dry with dew points in the teens and mid-20s, but the bigger factor, of course, was the environmental wind, which was strong out of the south, 15-20, and at times gusting 25 to 35. But what likely happened in Cohoes was that the fire itself produced its own weather environment. Because it burned so hot that superheated air rushing out of the top of the fire had to be replaced by air surrounding it, and that air rushed in. We likely had gusts 40, 45, maybe even 50, and that was just due to the environment that the fire itself caused. So it was a self-sustaining type scenario until the fire was knocked down enough to reduce the heat, which then ultimately reduced the winds. But a pretty awful situation in downtown Cohoes, with the fire itself likely enhancing the wind, which then went to enhance the fire.
All right, thank you for the insight, Steve. We broke the story and others throughout the day with our CBS 6 News app. You can download the app today on your smartphone for all the latest and breaking news in the Capital Region